Hello, sir. Good. How you doing?
A little behind vacation last week.
Oh, that's fine. That's all right. You enjoy it? Did you have a good time? Where'd you guys go?
Well, basically working around the house and then a couple times in Chicago.
Okay, so staycation.
Yeah, kind
Yeah.
of.
Well,
That's
but
always a good
got
thing.
away a couple days at least, right?
I didn't touch the computer the whole time.
Well, good. Good for you. I definitely understand that.
I'll get caught.
All right, you're fine. How you doing, Mo? Good, good.
I got a comment about my
Your what now? Your Windows. Okay. Okay. Do you have on your GitHub link? Okay. All right, I'll look at it. Yeah, yeah, I'll help you with it. Sure. Hello. Hmm?
Change the design.
Yeah, I just have to redo the whole website. myreceipt.org is all redone. Been about 4 years since it's been updated, so I trashed the old and brought in some new. Yeah. Still working on it, but a little cleaner. Cleaner look. Now the video will only show up on desktop, laptop, some tablets, but on mobile devices it shows up just as an image. That image will be a freezed image on mobile. If you take it down to freezed, it's going to show here, but on a mobile device it wouldn't. It'd be a freezed image. All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Well, Amanda's out sick. Both of them are out sick today. And so we're going to get started. We are in, well, this is the update at myreceipt.org. Well, we're still working on it, but it's been a while since it's been updated, so we're making it look a little newer, cleaner than what the old one was. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Here's what we're going to be working on tonight is a shopping list, adding Bitly, share Bitly to the list. But before we get to that, I want to go over the agenda for the rest of this week and next week. So let's see, week 14 was last week. To add a function to your shopping list to share via URL, add share button to your share list, work on CSS, work on web page content, photo, description, tags, title tag, etc. This week, add ability to convert that shared URL to a Bitly link, which we're going to do tonight, get you started anyway on Bitly, what you'll need. And Bitly, remember, is a service where you give it whatever length URL, a very long URL, will shorten it to share it, which is real popular to do for long URLs. And this works well for what we're doing because we've got a long URL, which is comprised of the list in our shopping list. So this week we'll be working on working on CSS, converting your URL to Bitly, working on CSS, working on web page content, final touches. Next week is the final presentation. We'll go over the details on that real quick here. So we're in week 15. In the end class, we're going to set up Bitly tonight, look at some developer resources Bitly's given us, grab your username and key that you'll need to shorten URLs in the JavaScript app. You'll submit your username and key in the week 15 discussion. No reading. Assignment. We'll look at this link in just a second, but you're going to add ability to share the URL to Bitly, work on CSS, work on your web page content, photos, description, title tag, etc., and make the web app your own. What I want you to do is we're working on shopping list up to this point, but it's not going to take much to switch it to other type of list. So I want you to switch it to another type of list, like an idea list, a book list, a word list, a movie list, whatever. Make sense? You can switch it back to shopping list after we're done presenting next week, but just so I can see that you put some thought into a different type of list would be good. And that means title change to whatever type of list it is. Change the title to fit the list. Update your about description of the app. And then submit your bit.ly link below using pre-populated lists showing how that list can be used. An example is if I click on this link here, it's going to bring me to this list here and populate it. It says this week you will add shared list logic. And so that's the actual list that was shared from that bit.ly link right there. Okay. So I'm going to go to a normal updated list app. I'm going to add in some content and show you what it's going to look like before we get started. So I'll pretend I have 20 items in here and I'm done. The about's updated to that. You'll have to update yours. And last week when we were done, when we clicked the share button, it just gave a URL of that, the shared values of that list. Now when we click it, it's going to pop up an actual a bit.ly link for that list. And so if I copy that and take it to another tab and share it, and now it has that list, those items in that list with that bit.ly. And the issue I found out last week was since we're using GitHub is a secure socket website, an SSL website. The API I was using for sharing bit.ly was a non-secured API. Well, I found a secure one, and then it worked. As soon as I switched out the API to the secure SSL, it worked just fine. So the first thing I need you to do is go to bit.ly.com, and you're going to register a new account in bit.ly, bit.ly, bit.ly.com, I'm sorry, bit.ly.com. bit.ly will work. And as soon as you sign in, you can sign in with Facebook, you can sign in with a normal email password. But go ahead and do that real quick, and then I'll show you what you're going to be gathering that you'll need anyway to gather. And while you're doing a sign up on bit.ly, let me explain what bit.ly is all about. Bit.ly is awesome because not only can you create with this app using bit.ly short links, but after that shopping list has been shared, you can see analytics on who's used that shopping list with bit.ly. It'll tell you how many clicks have been clicked on that link, how many users have clicked on it, what the location is, geographic location, what time of day, which is pretty good. And a lot of people don't know bit.ly does that. You might have heard of bit.ly, but the way I use bit.ly is not just to share links, but as a web developer, it's nice to get analytics of those links, and bit.ly gives you those analytics. So it breaks it down how many times people have clicked on it, things like that. So at the end of this session this week, you'll not only integrate bit.ly, but be able to get analytics on your shopping list that you share with people, which that's pretty cool. And the app that you share will be unique to you because we're using a bit.ly API that'll have your username and password only, which they require to use their API. And APIs basically are programmers' tool chest that most every service has an API, from like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, bit.ly, you name it, it probably has an API. An API are a way for developers to tie in the functionality of whatever that functionality is into your app. So you've seen a lot of apps like bit.ly's using an API from Facebook and Twitter to be able to log in with your Facebook and Twitter account. And you've probably seen that maybe in other accounts you've signed up for. And APIs can be used for, like I said, social media, logging in to other accounts, I don't know if you heard this last week, but Facebook is talking about doing away with logging in altogether as far as in multiple locations. It'll actually use different things to know who you are. Like when you sign up for an account, you'll choose different characters that you like, different facts about yourself, and use that to randomly every once in a while ask you, oh, by the way, what's your favorite food or something? You have to pick it to get in. So and that, by the way, when they do that, and they are going to do that, all the accounts that you now have tied Facebook with will be able to do that as well because of that API. So the benefit of an API is you're not only getting the benefits of that service, in this case Facebook login, but you are also getting all the tools that they bring along. The API for Bitly not only allows you to create the shortened URL, which is nice, because there are other codes you can use to do a short URL. But the one benefit of Bitly over other APIs is it gives you the analytics link. So like if you see on mine here, this little graph is some analytics, just some rough analytics on a Bitly account here. And it says here 40 total links on this one here. This is actually between March 25th and April 24th. 40 total clicks, 25 dark traffic, top refers, 38 US top locations, and it's on day creator right now. If I click to top performing, it'll switch the list to this. And if I scroll down, it'll actually tell me Bitly by Bitly. I'm gonna hide this chart so you can see it better. Bitly by Bitly, by the way, this is a shared list I put on our social media of the shopping list that we're creating, promoting what you guys are learning this semester. And we've had just in the last week, or last month actually, on this one, seven hits on this one. It was a day I posted, I think the 7 clicks was a day I posted it. It gives 5 from Facebook, 5 from dark traffic. And if you click on the dark traffic, and dark traffic basically means they shared it on other sources as well. It's nothing illegal, by the way. Just they shared it in other places. It sounds like dark traffic.
The dark one.
The dark world, yes. But as you can see down here on the left, here's all the Bitlys in the last 30 days. I created 13 bit links in the last 30 days, and each one of them gives me the analytics of each one of the Bitlys that I've created. And so basically that's what you'll be playing. You can also go into refers, where they came from. You'll notice the yellow one is Facebook, the orange is Twitter, and the dark orange is, or the light orange is dark traffic, the dark orange is Twitter. And then I can hover over certain days, like April 18th. Tuesday, April 18th was a big day. I can click on that one, and it was probably the day I posted this one for people to look at. And then if I click on location, it breaks it down out of all the 6 bit links in the last 30 days. On April 19th, specifically April 19th, the 6 bit links on April 19th were clicked on from US, Canada, and Australia. And again, I love that stuff. I love the numbers, analytics. I don't know, I just love analytics. Anybody else like analytics? Like numbers and graphs? And because what I think is cool is this, and this might just be the geek in me, and it probably is, but you're probably like this too, or you'll become this way. When you post something on a website, it's nice to know that somebody's visiting it somewhere in the world. I never would have thought that on that date that somebody in Australia would click on it. Right? Whatever. But that's kind of cool to note that. And here's an example of the power of analytics, the power of sharing analytics. I got an email 6 months ago, well, it's been about a year ago now, from a gentleman in the Soviet Ukraine that worked on a farm and had 5 kids. I have a course on PHP it's a free course on iTunes for anybody who can use. I update like once a year after I teach PHP at the end of the fall semester. It's had like 26,000 people take the free course or whatever. Anyway, this guy emailed me. He went through all the stuff, wanted some more information. And anyway, I got to know him. I said, I want to know a little bit about him. I knew from his email, he's from the Ukraine area. I didn't know exactly where. And he said father of five, never could afford to go to college. And he's taking courses, any course he can get for free on iTunes U, and stumbled across mine in a Twitter feed that he found and started taking the course. I thought that was pretty awesome. And so for me anyway, I mean, you guys have to pay for courses, but I think it's kind of cool, but you get credit for it. You're not getting credit for it, but I think it's kind of cool that you can do that with just sharing a link. And I get monthly emails from Apple that breaks down the analytics of who literally has downloaded my podcast or my lessons from their service on iTunes U. And it's all over the world. It's literally 50 countries every month. 50 countries on average every month click on the podcast I've created. That's just like crazy. It's like nuts. And so anybody, not anything special either, anybody can do it. And so Bitly is just, hopefully will get your eyes open to analytics to be like, wow, if I send this shopping list to all my friends on Facebook that I just created, or my book list, or whatever you're going to create, you can actually see when they used it, right? And, that's kind of cool. So anyway, everybody get signed into Bitly? All right, so once you get signed into Bitly, on the right side of Bitly, there is a drop down. It's for settings, and I'm hovering over right now on the overhead. It's that little icon there to the right of your username. Now, if you logged into Facebook like I do, it gives you a funky username, but I think it might do that maybe anyway for all usernames. I don't know. Do you guys have, how many logged in with your Facebook URL? Anybody logged in with Facebook or Twitter? So you probably have a real username here, right? Does it have anything weird in it?
Cut off.
Huh?
It's cut off.
Is it cut off?
5 letters.
But does it have something to do with you in the name?
It's username I chose.
It is, okay. It is your username you chose, okay. So if you do log in with social media, this is a username type you'll get. It's probably a database key of some type, but that's fine. So click on this button here, the settings button. Then it'll show you analytics of how many total bit links you've created, branded, all that stuff. But if you keep going down to settings under options and click on that, then click on advanced settings, then click on API support. And you'll finally get to this area on the screen, which should have login and API key. Do I need to do that again? So what I'm going to have you do is that information right there, you need to capture and submit in the week in-class assignment. So copy your login, copy your API key, go over to week 15 assignment, and submit your Bitly username and key. It should be in 15 in class, I believe. The first one in our module. 15 discussion and exercise. So submit it there. That'll kind of keep it there for you. That way when you go home, now you can log in when you go home and do the same thing. But this just kind of lets me know you got it. And it's there for posterity's sake for you to grab later. But you can log in when you get home and get it again. Yes?
I can't access it.
You can't access what now?
It says unauthorized.
On my module? Okay.
315.
Oh, I don't have it open for you? Oh, it helps to open it, right? All right, now you can get in.
Try last day.
Yeah, try it. Now refresh your page and let me know if you get in now. Sorry about that. So week 15 discussion and exercise. You signed up to Bitly. We're going to look at we'll look at some of the developer resources for analytics. And then I had you get your username and key for the app that we're going to look at in a second, how to implement it for the shortened URLs. And then just submit your Bitly username and key below. Should give you a text entry to do that. And again, week 15 discussion and exercises. So while you guys are doing that, I'm going to kind of see what it kind of looks like when you submit it. I'll refresh Brandon's here. All right, or Blake's. So Blake, okay, so it did bring in your S number. All right, that's fine. In general, you wouldn't share this information, but it's secure to our class, so we'll be fine. And what's nice about this username and key is it is unique to you. And that's another thing about APIs I want to talk about. When developer companies give you access to their API, they do give it to you generally for free for the most part, and it's a two-edged sword for that reason, the reason they do it. One is for analytics, like I just talked about, find out who's connecting to their API. Two is they know the more developers use their API, the more their app or suite of apps is going to get in the hands of other people, right? So that's why Bitly does it. So you think, well, that's pretty nice of them to do. It is nice of them to do that, but they do have to work to do that and get that done. But it does help their service in the long end. The more developers use Bitly to implement in an app like we're doing this semester, which more than likely, it probably is the first app you've used or maybe played with that had Bitly embedded. The API is fairly new for Bitly as far as being able for developers to use it. So I thought it was kind of cool that we're able to use it. So anyway, everybody submitted your username and your key. Now what we're going to do is after you've submitted that, go next, go to the assignment one, because we're going to talk about the assignment. I'm going to show you what I've done and kind of help you along with how to convert this to Bitly, what we did last week. It's basically just a function we'll have to add. But add the ability to convert shared URL to Bitly, work on CSS, work on your web page, make it your own. Is there any questions on making it your own on different lists? So I put some examples in there: idea list, book list, movie list. It could be golf scores, whatever you want to put in there. It doesn't matter. If you do golfing, you could have a list for golf. Each one of the holes, what's your par? And at the end of it, calculate whatever you want to do. It's whatever ideas you have. There's no wrong idea, but no ideas. That's the only wrong one. So I don't want to make it too difficult, but you're using the same ecosystem we have now, just morphing a little bit to make it your own. Some of you might still, by the way, use a shopping list, but just try to tweak it to make it your own somehow, make it a little bit different. Okay, make sense? All right, so let me show you here on this link here. If you click on that week 15 Bitly to the right there, it should launch in a browser the pop-up first, which is the on Windows load command that we'll look at in a second, that welcomes everybody to the app list. I think I mentioned last week, we could create a cookie that only allows us to pop up once every 24 hours on the user's machine. I haven't done it on this one, but it could easily be done to where we create a cookie. If it sees a cookie exist, it doesn't pop up. And then at the end of the 24 hours expiration, it deletes it and can pop up again. Does that make sense? So I didn't do that for this, but it might be an idea for you. And then this Bitly now has been fleshed out as the pass-by value we went over last week to share our list, which is this, comma, week, comma, you, space, will, add. You'll notice in here, though, percentage 20 is in here. Anybody remember what the percentage 20 is? Percentage 20? Space, somebody said it. Yeah, it's a space one, and that's one we clean up. There's a function we use called, I think it's called cleanup or something, where we clean up the code that's coming in from our pass-by reference, pass-by value here. And if we don't clean it up, that percentage 20 would come in, by the way. And if you see that when you're playing with yours, that's what it is. And I'll show you that function in just a second again. But people can, take your list that you've shared the Bitly with, and you could share it via a text message, which most of you probably would. or social media. That's what I encourage you to do when you're playing with this week. When you get your list halfway presentable to people to look at, share it and see what people think. See what they use. Now, I've used this one. My family's used the one that I'm showing you now that I've created for us as an example about 8 to 10 times the last couple of weeks in different stores and stuff. Shared list going to shopping malls and stuff like that. And so some of the results of what you're seeing here is feedback from them on things that I didn't need, or too much information, or not enough information. Mostly it's too much stuff. I got rid of some stuff and cleaned it up a little bit. And so I want to add in maybe another list into another item in this list. I can do that, and the end user can do this as well, and share that list again. And once they share that list, and I'll go to new tab, existing list plus a new list, the new item's been added to it. So we can keep going on and on. The way we did it a couple times, my wife and I, was when we created a list in the store. We just went down like this, did not click the remove button on any of them, and just kept that bit.ly. And even if we did keep by the way, if you did click the remove button on these, the end user, if they reuse that bit.ly link again, it will repopulate that same list over and over again. That makes sense? So it's kind of, really don't need it, the remove button, but it's a good logic to understand what remove does. And so I just kept it in there. And so, because technically, even though I hit remove on all of these on this URL or on this shopping list, if I go back to that original source in my social media or email, it's going to bring that list in right back again anyway. Make sense? So that's kind of a nice feature to be able to do that. If you want to, my wife had an idea, you might want a different list for different stores that she has certain static items like most families do that you get every 2 weeks or every week. Right? I don't know how many times I met you in Highlander every week, every night after class, and we'd be getting something. So it's the same stuff pretty much each week, right? And so you might have to add a few things, but the list is a list, right, of what you have to have. The staple stuff, the milk, the bread, the butter, stuff like that, diapers, whatever it is, whatever your family structure is. Maybe depends, I don't know. So whatever your family structure is, that's what you need, dog food, cat food. But the nice thing about it is you can reshare it over and over again. Okay, so that's the list. Makes sense on that, on the bit.ly. Because last week when we ended, we could share the list, but it was sharing the entire URL with all the values. This week it actually creates a new bit.ly each time you click that share list. And what's cool about it, I want to go back to my bit.ly account to show you this, because I've created a couple bit.ly since we initially came in. And let's go back to my original. There it is, April 24th. Is that today? Yep. So there's the one I just created. The last one actually I created. This week you will share list logic eggs. So that's the one I just created. It put it in the bit.ly repo for me to look at, and I can begin looking at the analytics on it immediately. So it had one hit already, which is the one that I created. That's pretty cool. Tells exactly the time, which server's not here. You can tell it's 9:54 p.m. So it'd be what, East Coast? Is that right? Or West Coast? East Coast? We're in 4 hour, 5 o'clock, and it's 9. It's 4 hours difference. I don't know where the server is on that. Arizona, maybe? I have no idea. Who's 3.5, 4 hours difference from us? But anyway, immediately puts in your bit.ly repo to look at in your bit.ly list. So now let's look at the code logic, and I'll kind of blow the screen up here to show you. And for posterity's sake, after you've taken this course, we're done after next week, I did update my GitHub here because, I think at the end of the summer, they kill all the students out of the courses. They delete you. Well, in the GitHub, I put all the stuff we did this semester, starting out with the plunker stuff and the beginning hello world stuff in weeks 1 through 5, starting the shopping list in week 5, 7, version 1.2, 8, 2.1, so on and so forth, all the way to what we are doing next week. That's all in there. So for posterity's sake, now that you are on GitHub, you can actually fork this GitHub to your account. And I wanted to show you that right now, and it's on the video here, the podcast. You don't need to do it right now. When you get home, when you log into your GitHub and you go to my GitHub URL here for this week, when you click fork, you're going to have an option, which you only have one option. I have multiple accounts, but I'll click on my another one here, like iOS course, and notice it's forking my repo that I created to my iOS course repo that I teach my mobile app development with, and it puts it in there to be used. And so you can do the same thing. You can fork it. And the nice thing about forking repos is this. Not only is it easy to do, but any changes I make to that repo as time goes on, any changes, you'll be notified of it in GitHub immediately. When you log in next time, it'll tell you, oh, Chuck made this change, and you'll be, oh, that's kind of cool. I might click on it and see what changes were made. It could even be next spring when I make the changes for the course again, which I will do. I'm going to use the same list and just update it. So that's the nice thing about GitHub is the fact that you can, when you fork, when you see a cool GitHub that you like, a good repo that you like, when you fork it or follow that person, anything that they do, you will be notified of. Make sense? All right, so let me go to our RVC list. And the first thing I'm going to go over is we'll start in the index.html. We'll start, since we're presenting next week, I'll try to take it slow this week and go over some changes I have made for this final version, this release version. I talked about last couple weeks in the meta tag, and most of you are doing this already, but putting in there the 1-to-1 scale on initial scale, max scale. And remember what that does on a mobile app is it stops the mobile device from blowing up and going and zooming out or zooming in, I'm sorry, when you tap on a text box. That stops it from happening. And you kind of keep the structure of your code the way you want it, the screen. And my wrapping, I did go over this last week, my width is determined, max width is determined by CSS. And I showed you that last week. This number 10 is for Apple devices. If you are on an Apple device and you save it, you can save it to your home screen. When you save it to your home screen, it's going to give the list, the name to the home screen RVC list, and it's specifically for the add to home. So these 3 lines, 10, 11, and 12, are for iOS devices. I've not tested on Android, but this last 2 are supposed to be generic. Android is supposed to work on this too. And those of you that are Android users, you know how you can be on a website and save it to your home screen? What it'll do is, whatever you put here in the name, it's going to put it as the icon name of that web app, of that web page. So the RVC list or whatever you want to call yours. So that's what that is. That's what these 3 lines in 10, 11, and 12. The meta description is for search engines like Google that nightly goes through the websites or globally and looks for content. And then the author would be myself. You would update it, you could put your name in there. The script, I have it loaded in the body tag, right inside the body tag. This hasn't changed. So it's a few versions back. And that was so I could utilize the Windows on load event more efficiently. So if you have yours in the header file and the head tag, I would move it outside of the head tag and put it in the body tag, your JS file. The div tag here is for the CSS, the wrapper. The wrapper div on CSS controls the width of this app and a lot of other things to do with the tags. Shopping list, this hasn't changed. This line here, 2021, is actually all one line 20. Well, I'm highlighting 2021. These two sections, this line of code here is the input text box. What it's doing is using the enter key on your device, whether keyboard or phone or tablet, to fire the BTN submit button, click event basically. So the enter will fire the button submit. So you don't have to hit, the user can just type in eggs, enter, bread, enter, so on and so forth. And they don't have to click the button each time. The button's still there, they don't have to click it, which a lot of apps do. 23, 24, and 25 are placeholders. My list, labels, my cart, depending on what's available. When the app first loads, my list is empty, labels is empty, and my cart is empty until somebody adds something to the list. So you add somebody to the list. There's the button submit that submits the on-click about button that tells about the app. That is this button here. Share button, the ID share button is this button here, share shopping list. And then lastly, the footer is just promoting RVCR code. You can put whatever you want to down there. You don't have to put a URL down there. You can just put whatever it is you want that's fitting to the app is fine. So that's the HTML. Now I'm going to show you the JS file. Particularly, I want to focus on the bit.ly changes from last week. And I put in here for the bit.ly stuff for this week, version 4.1 in the comments. So last week we ended with being able to share the list, but we couldn't use the bit.ly information. And the reason we couldn't was this right here. I had an API in there when I was testing it, but the API was not a secure API. It did not have a, did not begin with HTTPS. So because of that, cross-scripting is disallowed in most browsers. Cross-scripting execution. What that means is if you have a secure website and you have script that is non-secure being launched, browsers will block it from being launched. So whenever I would click that share button during development, it was working fine because I was on a local development environment. But when I put it on the web, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, we'll get the little pop-up with a little red exclamation point and say, something's wrong here with security, cross-scripting error. And cross-scripting is what it sounds like. Your multiple scripts, secure, non-secure, and most browsers will disallow that from happening. So my solution was, I've got to find a secure API for that, which I searched and found one. Found the URL for that in the API documentation for bit.ly, which took about a couple hours to find it. It wasn't easy, but I found it. It wasn't out there in the front center like you'd think it would be. But again, it's just recently been brought to light. So, but anyway, I was able to shorten this pretty cool using JSON. And so what you'll do is the login that you submitted tonight. Well, the first thing is this here. Get short URL 0 is a variable you'll see. I think actually on this one here, yeah, I'll show you downstream how it's used. But just remember, I need to note, kind of keep that in your head. I declared a variable called get short URL, and I declared it at 0 right now. Login is your login information. You'll replace mine with yours. API key is your API key. And this is found if you didn't, an easy way to remember it, so you don't have to log back into RBC Eagle later. When you go into Bitly, go to the settings and advanced, and you'll find it right there for you to get again. And it doesn't change, by the way. Your login is going to stay the same. Your key is going to stay the same. The URL is the root of it anyway, is my rbclist.github.io. Yours would be your username. I think I had you guys do last name, .github.io, index.html, list. And remember, list would be the object that we're wanting to grab a hold of, equals, and then to the right of this is the entire array that we've had since week 5, shopping list. That's the array we've been using. That's not changed. So whatever in the shopping list is coming into this, and since it's an array already, it'll come in separated by commas, okay, automatically. Then here's a real powerful thing. And by the way, what I'm getting ready to show you here, you can use this API, this get JSON, for any type of callback. In this case, I'm using it for API for Bitly, but it could be used for any type of callback. So $.getJSON, left parentheses, there's my API. It ends with, notice at the end of the API, shorten, which is a shorten Bitly command for short that URL. Callback equals ? And then the left and right bracket gives a format, which is JSON. And by the way, JSON format can be JSON, XML, XLS, TXT, RTF, just to name a few. I use JSON because it's easy for the browser to break it apart later in just a second. And this is the example, by the way, that Bitly gave. The only thing Bitly didn't give me initially was this secure socket layer for the API. Everything else is in their Bitly documentation for development. Yeah. That is jQuery, correct. For jQuery to work in your browser, I do have one. I don't think I mentioned it. It'll work in most every modern browser that's HTML5 compliant, but I do include, and you should already have a JS in there already in your script. I think you guys already have that maybe, the jQuery script call. That's all you have to have, yeah. And it doesn't have to be that one I use. It can be any link to a jQuery.min.js above version 2.5 or something. But if you just want to use mine, that's fine. You can use that one. It's a one-liner that you can use. But I think since week 5 or 6, we've had a jQuery one in there for our normal stuff we've been doing. We've been able to use it. We just haven't used all of it yet. So, but no, you definitely need that call to the jQuery. And you can use what you already have. Should work fine. I just updated mine to the latest, which is 3.2.0. But yeah, and it's backward compatible, so that's a good question. Definitely need that in there, which you guys already have, but you might not have that version I have in mine. Okay, so yeah, the jQuery here, calling the JSON, API key, getting it from the API key here, I'm 21, login 22, long URL 22, or login was 20, login URL is 22. Then this function response basically is if everything goes good, meaning you are on the internet, you're live on the internet, and Bitly's up and running, it'll come back with a response. This API will. And the response, right inside the response, you'll notice I changed get's URL, short URL from 0 to 1, and you'll see why in just a second. Then the normal get element by ID share list. I put in there the text to the Bitly share list, and I should put I wanted to originally put a BR tag there, but I left this. This actually does nothing, by the way. This /n does nothing. I wanted to do a new line BR, but I left it at that. But this is basically going to bring in the URL from the bit.ly into the list. So I'll show you real quick. It basically brings in this right here. That's what it's bringing in. And then copy to clipboard. This is a feature that basically, it's a function, you'll see in a second, that pushes to that JavaScript function that bit.ly URL. Let's go there now. And all it does on the copy to clipboard is use a Windows.prompt that says copy and share list. And the reason I did this was, since all the mobile devices and Windows devices copy things differently, Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, instead of putting all the instructions for all the different types of devices, just copy and share. People are used to that. Because when this pops up, it does highlight the bit.ly. And so literally the users have to, if you're on a mobile device, tap it and copy, and then paste it wherever you want to share it. If you're on Windows, you can do Control-C. If you're on a Mac, do Command-C. And the end users should already know those copy commands. So it's really, in my mind, too much information, because I actually started with all that, and my family says, TMI, I know how to copy. I know how to copy stuff. Don't need that. And so now, will there be some people, when you say copy and share, they're like, don't know? Yeah, probably. But you don't want to make the app so user-friendly. I was going to say another word, but so user-friendly that it nullifies and maybe offends the majority of users. Does that make sense? If you're really worried about it, you could put a link at the bottom that says help, that goes to another page or a pop-up or whatever to explain what copy means if you want to do that. If you want to go into that, you can definitely do that. So that makes sense? Okay, so once it goes to that copy to clipboard function, it just pops it up and demo that, puts it in there, highlights it, and then they can copy it and share it, however they want to do it. Then that's the completion of that. And by the way, on the paths list, I use the same function name. So if I go to where that's at, which is tied to, it's tied to this function called share. And the share function, remember from the index.html, was tied to the button, the share button. So when the share button is clicked, the share button is clicked, it's going to fire it. The code for the share button, though, is in the load list, if I'm not mistaken. So let me go down there. And that was the same from last week. Populate. No, not that one. Display shopping list. Here we go. So I added that down here. Line 256. It's the same one I did last week, but I just making note of it again here. Added a var statement for BTN share list. This whole statement is an input HTML that's going to be plugged in that inner HTML that says share button right now on the HTML side, which I just showed you. So that button's going to show up there. And the reason, could this be done only in the HTML? It could, but the one reason I like to put it in here was, let me show you, when the app runs initially, if I put it in the HTML, I would have to hide it initially from showing up in the load code with that div command. I didn't want to do that. And so I ended up hiding it here If the array length is greater than 0, it puts the list in that shopping list. It puts the share button below it. If it doesn't, if the list does not exist, there's nothing left, it nullifies all of the IDs. My list, share button, and share list is emptied out, basically. So you could put an HTML and clear out this way, but I thought, yeah, I'll just do it. Add one more button. We're already doing that already in the code, line by line when things come in already. We're putting a remove button in there each time dynamically. So I just added that logic in here for the share button to put below the about. I wanted it to be below the about and the link to stay here where it's at. So when that's once that's done, the functionality is the same as it has been. I didn't change anything else. So I did add the from last week. The only change I made was when they click the share function, the share button function, it goes to the Java function share. I think I used the same exact name I did last week, which was share. So there it is. So it goes to the pass list, and I just went over the pass list. Pass list is what we just went over that shortens that URL. Now let me show you some things to clean up that I did have to add for spaces and stuff. That I did. I had to add it for certain browsers. Like it worked fine, I think, the way it was for Chrome and Safari. But Firefox threw in, if you had any spaces in between the words in the list, it threw in that percentage to 0. So here's what I ended up doing. Let me go down to that remove unwanted function. And remember, this remove unwanted function is called every time something's added to the list. So let me show you where that's exactly called here. So populating, it's called right now initially when the app loads, because when the app loads, the onload window event calls this populate shopping list onload. It clears out both arrays, the shopping list and add to cart array. It reads, if it exists, the concal list cookie, in your case, your last name list. Then it removes unwanted characters from that list. And here's what I had to add from last week. The first thing it checks, as always, is the if the string is null or empty, it returns false. Else, it grabs a string that's brought over, which is the entire cookie in this case. And there's that %20 for the space. And remember, these are regexes. Regexes start with a / end with a / G. And the G is for global, meaning anything in that string it will replace. So anytime it saw a space, I didn't want it to be quote, no space, quote, end quote, because it would just shove everything together. So I literally put a physical space in there in the code. Otherwise, if I didn't do that, if it saw a space in between words and a list, it would shove them all together. I don't want that. And then the rest of these are cleaning out, like for instance, if it sees exclamation point, $, bar symbol. This is for some of the older versions that we did. I let that in there and then delete it. And this is for non-printing characters. This one does. And then it finally returns it to where it came from. In this case, it was the onload, populate, shopping list onload event. So it's called there. Also, too, when items are added to the list, back and forth, display shopping list is always called as always. Display shopping cart is always called. Clear focus, save cookie. So if I'm not mistaken, it's only called there at that point right now. I want to go further and see here where else I call it there. I think that's it. Yes, this was just added last week. So let me see where else I'm calling this at. I think that's the only place, but we'll find out. All right, so populate, shopping list on load. That's it. That's the only place I'm calling it. And so the logic is upon load, it reads it, dumps it into the needed array. If the cookie list, by the way, and the function on the populate list on load is this. On line 26, this was changed last week, it gets the list, the get statement. And remember on the list, it gets up towards the top here. The name is a list I threw to this one. So here's what's happening on this one. It's grabbing the word list in the, after the question mark. Then it's grabbing the length of that whole URL past that, whatever it might be. Getting that length here. The length of everything before the value, which would be the list equals. Then here it's grabbing the front part of it from 0, replacing front with nothing. So it's getting rid of basically the list equals information and then returning it back. So the get statement, basically the get function, is getting the entire list that's past that URL. And what it's basically doing is everything past the URL here is being shared. So if I just hit this here, there you go. So it's grabbing this basically right here. This week you will add share list logic. That's what's being returned with the get function. All right. So let's see here. Save cookie is the same. Everything else is the same from last week. So let me recap on the changes then. So 4.1, pass list, added to that the ability to use your bit.ly login and API, use a JSON to call it back. Once it's called back, it then creates a URL, puts it in the share list ID on the HTML page. It also pops up to the user to copy it. And by the way, if there's an error on that, I revert back to what we did last week. If there was an error for whatever reason on your web browser, it reverts back to the long URL list, which was what we shared last week without the bit.ly added to it. And that's done easily with what's called a try catch. So notice I do a try here, try left bracket. It tries to get JSON. So it's trying all of this right here. If it fails, it's an error. And during testing, you can uncomment this alert to see what, if there is an error, what it is. It'll tell you. And then it populates just the URL as it stands, which would actually look like this here. That's what it would share, basically, is what we did last week. Make sense? So if it does error out for whatever reason, there's a fallback for the user still to get a list to share to the end users. All right? So going back to the last one, which is the CSS file. No changes on my CSS from last week at all. I'll go over a couple things we went over last week. So let me get to the wrapper. The wrapper is the beginning div tag on the body tag. Underneath the body tag is a wrapper ID. Body ID is wrapper. So it's width is 300, 20 pixels all around, padding 20, 5 pixels left top, 0, 0. It's got a shadow around it and a border of 1 pixel. So what that does is, if I take and try to shorten this, it stops at 300 pixels. It literally won't go any further. Now, it does not stop going vertical only horizontal. That did not put the CSS for vertical in there, which you normally don't anyway when you're using CSS. Okay? But definitely do that. That'll help. And you can play with the width. Width 300 seems to work pretty good for most all mobile devices, even the older ones, like the old iPhone 4s and 3s and old Droid phones when they first came out. That has like the 3.5-inch screen width-wise, so it should work for all of those. So any users that are using it. And the one reason you want to force your width is to force the way your content looks. You don't want any questions. So if you don't force the width, the device forces that. So does that make sense? So your device is going to do what it wants to with that web page. So by forcing the list width the way we want to, it's going to help. Also, some other things that I've used in my CSS was for labeling. The label ID within the HTML, you'll see the footer. I use that as an ID and do some coloring and sizes of fonts and stuff. Active link, I wanted white throughout. Hover link, hot pink for whatever reason. I like that one on my device when I was looking at it. But my visited and active both stay white. And so you'll notice when I hover over this, it's hot pink. Maybe my wife suggested, I don't remember. I like pink, nothing against pink. But you'll notice, even though I click on this and come back, it should be blue by default, but it's not, it stays white. And the reason I wanted that was because of the blue background. The blue background behind it is why I chose that. You don't have to do that, but that's why I chose mine. You'll see a lot of web pages do that today, though. You'll see a lot of web pages have the active and the visited both the same color to where it doesn't change. Because again, if you don't control it as a developer, the browser preferences and the user preferences control the active link color. Sorry, the visited link color, what that's going to be. All right, and even the active link. So active link by default for most web browsers is going to be black, and the visited by default is going to be blue. All right, so if you don't override that, you could not even see the link sometimes, depending on the background. Like I had blue, wouldn't even see it. That makes sense? So you can take and choose what you want to with my CSS and see how I've used it in my code throughout the HTML. And so yeah, no changes at all though have been made on my CSS. The only changes were brief changes in the HTML, which I went over, and the function change for the bit.ly, which was called pass list, which was what's called last week. I just updated the API to be the API secure socket layer. Now I want to end with on the bit.ly page real quick, if I could, some reading to help. If you wanted to get in here and look at some documentation for resources. Actually, I don't want that. I want settings, advanced. For developers, it says API keys are being depreciated. We recommend you using OAuth. And OAuth is the next version, and I have created one starting the next version here of OAuth. The OAuth applications for bit.ly is pretty much like what we're doing now with the username and key, except it uses what's called an ID and a client secret. All right. They're still developing it. There was some bugs in it when I tested it. That's why we're not using it. And from everything I'm reading, what we're using now will be good for at least 1.5 to 2 years down, so it'll be good. But I would recommend reading up on the OAuth applications. It has an API documentation here you can click on that goes over getting started for the API developers. And it gives you code examples from everything from it starts out with getting started, which goes over everything as far as how Bitly best practices are, to API documentation, because there are limits to, you'll never reach those limits, but there are limits to how many links can be created, something like 10,000 a month or something. Code libraries go in and give examples like of the new OAuth, has good web examples to help show how it works from all the languages. So action scripts, C#, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Python, Ruby on Rails, Tempu, VB.NET, all of them are given for you. Public Bitly data. Says there are many ways to find Bitly data to begin working with using Bitly's API, and I've already showed you some of the analytics it gives you out of the box. But as a developer, you can embed those analytics in other reports and stuff, which is kind of nice. And so this one here gives some links to that. And over on the top part, community is discussion groups, which you can find some sometimes really good discussion as far as wrapped around the API. It uses a Google group and issues people are having right now with OAuth authorization specifically. And then My Apps is where you manage any apps that you've created. And I've just started creating the one that we're doing this semester, and going to be probably implementing that next year once all the bugs are worked out. So it's in draft right now. You'll see right here, Bitly currently supports OAuth 2 draft specifications. And the word draft means draft. It's not yet fleshed out yet. But anyway, you definitely need to read. I would recommend anyway, reading, skimming over at least, getting familiar with the Bitly documentation for developers. On this one here down further, it does have links as well where we got your guys' username or your login API key. The reset API does what it sounds like. So if you reset an API, you're basically nullifying all apps that have used that API prior, if that makes sense. You generally do that is, in this case, so you test this app with this API key, and you're done testing, and you're ready to go live, you can then reset it to another API for live. That makes sense? You don't have to do it that way, but that's the way a lot of developers do it that way. Good practice to do that, okay? And again, lastly, once you do get an API implemented for Bitly into your code and start testing it, you will start seeing, like tonight, we see here, the APIs that I created tonight are now in here from today. Questions on Bitly API? Yeah. Let me turn this fan down. Sorry. What was that again?
Some URLs that have tiny URLs.
Yeah, tinyURL is another API service that does short URLs. It doesn't have. It does not have the analytics part that Bitly has, and it's a little. Trying to put this. It's used for the tinyURL API can be used without authenticating. So you'll find on the tinyURL website a lot of ads, pop-up ads and stuff to you if you've ever used it. I've used it before when I didn't want to authenticate to share an image or something. So it works, but for what we're using, the purpose of what we're needing, Bitly fits better. But you're right, tinyURL is another service. Google also has a short URL service as well. In fact, let me pull it up here real quick. And they do have APIs and examples as well. Google does. We just didn't use it. And one reason I didn't use Google is it does not have the robust analytics that Bitly has. So it's goo.gl is a Google rendering of, or same type of service as Bitly. And so like, here's some that was created. It does give you some analytics, but does not break it down as much as, well, they did add some new features here too. It gives a different platform. So maybe they did add that. I just haven't used it as much as I have Bitly. I just like Bitly better. Just personal preference, I guess. So Google does have one as well, and they do have APIs. I know I have used it in the past a little bit. I just lean towards Bitly. I think just because it's more widely used than Google short URLs, and more widely used in apps than Google for whatever reason. I don't know what that reason is. So anyway, and there's more besides those three. More besides Google, Bitly, and the which one was it you mentioned? Yeah, more. There's more than those as well. So, all right. So here's the dealio for this week. You're going to take what I've given you, and what I suggest to do is the final link for this week, or the example link, as always, is still in here. So you go down to the assignment examples for this week, week 15. So you have the ability to share URL to Bitly, work on your CSS, work on your web page content, make the list something different, as I mentioned, and to share, to get to my GitHub page or GitHub repo. I think it's a week before here. Yeah, week 14. If you click on this link, it goes to the GitHub repo. And I do recommend on the GitHub repo, when you're logged into your account, when you get home, is to fork my GitHub repo to your account. Okay, fork it. And then you can also come in here, and if it's not already set that way, set it to watching. And then any changes made to this, you'll be notified of immediately. And yeah, so look at my code, use as much as you want to. Don't use as much as you want to. The functionality, though, is as mine is, but you're going to personalize it between now and next week. And let me go over that piece real quick. So next week is our final presentation, and it is opened up. So if we go to the final project for next week, and you do have besides turning in what you're finishing this week, you do have a discussion as well, as always, this week to finish. So next week when you come in, you'll present your final app, you'll demo it. You'll demo how to add stuff, move stuff, remove stuff, share a link. You'll show your app description and instructions, if any, for your app by hitting the about button or help or whatever you want to call it. It's up to you. I'm not going to give you, you don't have to call it about. Share challenges and successes you had, what future changes you would like to make to the app, and then you'll submit your Bitly link here. And so the thought is next week when you come, I'll have all your links in here by class time, and I will have you drive up here and record your screen session here and your voice, and then we'll capture all of that in one session as one podcast for everybody to listen to. And you will have a review sheet to finish for everybody. It'll just like a survey of what you thought of the app, ideas you had while you were watching it, stuff like that. Real simple, 3 to 4 thoughts that you have about the app. And that's just basically to keep you focused on the presentation. So you'll have to get to the person presenting their name, what their app name is, what the functionality of the app is. You'll type all that in. Then you'll give a little survey at the bottom of ideas you have, what your thoughts are. Done. Pretty simple. Like 4 to 5 questions that'll be in there. Nothing real major. But you'll fill out one of those for each one of the presenters. And that is a final night next Monday. The week after that is finals week. So this is your final. And literally the final test is the final project, like I do in a lot of my programming classes. But I'm hoping that you got a lot out of this one because it's building upon the same app since week 5. little by little, incremental by incremental, building upon it. And it's an app that basically, the reason I chose the shopping list app is it's an app that includes all the basic functionality that you would ever need in a web app. And so everything from listing to arrays to sharing arrays to sharing links, all of that functionality is used in a lot of web apps. And so all in this one web app. And then also hopefully helps you on the versioning, which you do a lot in app development. A lot of versioning is done all the time, where you take a milestone, which we basically did each week, a certain milestone that we completed, up to the finished product. And hopefully that'll help you as well as in any developing language you go into, and continue on to JavaScript. And I did want to show you one example of a real live milestone project I'm working on in GitHub using Windows application with a local company here in town. We're using GitHub for their bugging list or debug list and submitting issues and stuff like that. So I thought I'd show it to you guys and get a real world scenario here of functionality. So let's see here. Boom, boom. Let's go to it. There's that one. Okay, so it's called Aqua Narita is the name of the project. And I'm actually only using GitHub for meeting notes and issues. The app code is saved in Visual Studio, Visual Source Control. So it's repoed somewhere else for the code. I'm using this, as you can see here, meeting notes, requirements, stuff that have been gathered throughout since January. And then lastly, the issues these were just added last week. We just started using it last week. But here's kind of what an issue bug list could look like in a development platform using GitHub. All different labeling for each one of them. The labeling can be active, closed, future, on hold, epic, questions, ready, resolved, and ready to, and please test. And example is resolve, please test. These are items that are to be testing right now. And you can query these down to just those, which is nice. And I actually have a dashboard that they use that shows a real nice view of this. In fact, let me show you that real quick. If I go to milestones right now, we have I think it's 5 issues in the milestone. And we just created this last week. But when you click on the milestone, it breaks it down into what's in the milestones, any comments people have can be accessed as well. And as soon as testers are done, they move it and can close it. Like I'll open one of these to show you. Say they test this order equipment tomorrow morning. They can come in here and say, looks good, and hit close and comment. When they hit close and comment, it's going to put it into the closed section, which right now there's only one because I literally just started using this to help them out. But they like it. It works well. These are non-programmers that are using it. But everybody knows what's going on. They know how to use it. And here's the functionality of it. Like on these here, they all get an email. The list of people that are in this, which is like 5 of them, they get an email. And then when the person wants to test, they just click on their name. So say Brett's a person, he can click on this. And now he's assigned himself to this bug, to this issue to test. If he likes it, he closes it. If that's not quite right, he can make a comment and make it back. It'll send it back to me immediately. And let's go back to that one and take him out of there because he's not done that. And I can even uncheck it. And so I don't know if you saw that on this, up to 10 people can be assigned to an issue or a bug. And so that's important as well, because you have a team of developers working on one issue or one bug. And these team of developers, especially if I use you guys as an example, could literally have this app could be forked. We'll say this is a JavaScript app, could be forked to all you developers, and we could work in tandem in different sections of the code. Say, okay, you get the about page, you get the home page, you get this page, you get that page. And then we could have developers and part of the list, testers, part of the list, all using GitHub. And it's totally free. And GitHub has some pretty cool, GitHub has some pretty cool tools to use to help managers view this. This looks okay, but managers like to see things a little colorful and graphy and charty. If you've ever worked with managers before or CEOs, anybody worked with CEOs or CIOs before, they don't want to see all this. It's too much information. So I'll try to show you here an example of a chart from a real live, again, project I'm working on with a group here. So let me see if I can email it to myself, and I'll pull it up on the overhead here. I thought you guys would like this, at least get something out of it, hopefully. It's always good to see things that's happening in real world situations. And I like to use, this is all free that we're using. It doesn't cost the company anything. And even though they could definitely afford it, if they don't need to, why spend the money? Okay, so let me pull this up real quick. Called the issues dashboard is what it is. There it is. I found the URL. You guys will like this. The name of the app is called Waffle. And again, these are APIs used for to connect with GitHub, any repo that you've got. I misspelled this one. Waffle.io, Aqua Aerobic. All right, so that's what it looks like right there. And so much nicer view, as you can see. It shows all the ready to test items in progress, on hold and pending, and completed in one nice column view. Again, free to use, called waffle.io. It breaks it down into the metrics of how much time people have spent on it, any project settings. But this is basically what the managers are viewing, or as issues are added, things of that nature. And this can be unauthenticated access. So I could send this link to anybody in the team. They don't need to be on GitHub, and they can literally click on, like, for instance, these here that are ready to test. They can click on the GitHub icon. It'll take them right to that issue, and they can look at it if they want to. But most managers park right here. They just want to see globally where everything's at, what people are working on, making sure there's some movement and action items between each meeting. And so I thought I'd show that to you. That's a real live example, productive example of GitHub being used in a development scenario. Yeah.
They call that a Scrum board.
What is it?
They call that a Scrum board.
Yes. Yeah, this one here is a thumb board, right?
Agile development for you.
Yes. And it's being pulled from the GitHub repo, but it looks in a much nicer format for folks to see that are non-developers or whatever. So I thought I'd show that to you. And this is being recorded too, by the way, but it's waffle.io, and then you just log in with your GitHub information and you choose which public repo you want to use, and it begins pulling in all information. Now, granted, you have to have those issues in there for it to pull, but you can even go down and you can tweak it as well by going in here. And I went in and did some column tweaking on colors. I wanted to make sure the colors match the colors on my GitHub list which I had to do that. So, but that's about it. So anyway, I thought I'd show that to you. So questions about next week, what's new, what you're going to be presenting. Again, if you need any help, look at the final GitHub repo I've given you for code help. But hang back if you need other help tonight. I'd be more glad to help you. I know one person back there needed some help. So otherwise, look forward to what you guys are going to present next week. Just wrap it up, make it your own this week. Whatever list you want is fine by me, as long as all the functionality is there to be able to add, be able to move, remove, share, the description's in there, done. And I'm not looking for perfection, just that it's functional, and I don't expect it to be 100% complete. That's why I have the question, what for future changes would you like to make? So you can work on it more in the summer or whatever. But my thought is, what I want you to do, challenge to you, is to actually use it after the class in some form or fashion. And by using it, you will keep learning, because you'll want to add more things to it, and then you'll want to keep adding to your learning on JavaScript. JavaScript's pretty powerful. It's not going anywhere. And as you found out this semester, it's probably used in more apps than you thought originally, and for a good reason. It's, again, very powerful. It doesn't take any server resources. It's all client-based resources. And once you learn the code, which I don't think is too difficult to learn, the syntax, it's a fun language. It's a fun language to learn, fun language to play with, I think. So anyway, you guys have been a great bunch of students. I look forward to next week. Again, if you have any questions, hang back or come up and see me, and look forward to next week. Great. Enjoy the weather out there too, by the way, except for the allergies, which I know I've got. Anybody else? Allergies, yeah. Got those. Oh, and I did not give an announcement, which I normally do, but we do have our 3D event, 3D demo event this Wednesday.